It is late in the day. It is the first words that I speak today as well. Over at the Kristen, I think it's Hjellerdy. I made progress on the pronunciation last night. The Kristen Hjellerdy Gallery yesterday here in Berlin. It was awesome. Very cool scene. Kind of felt like the first big hangout after New Year's. Anyways, welcome back. Artist Journal, January 12th, 2024. Broadcasting from a beautiful, typically cloudy winter day here in Berlin, Germany. My name's Adrian Pocobelli, and this work, it's almost hard to look at. The red is kind of blinding. I probably won't leave it up here for too long. I find it hard to look at, but it doesn't mean, but it's incredibly powerful, isn't it? And original for a few reasons. Of course, as many of you will already know, this is the myth, sometimes called the King of Tezos. And so, as I've heard, let's put it that way. So the myth is back, and it's works like this. That myth, I would argue, got his reputation from works like this, that in the intensity. And of course, this is Basquiat. And of course, we recognize this. Probably like 99% of the people watching this will recognize this from the Warhol, Basquiat, famous. I mean, again, one of the most celebrated artists in the digital art scene, Basquiat. And thank you to, I think it was August Ground, 3 months ago, fixing my pronunciation, what I was calling Basquiat. Maybe that's a North American pronunciation there, but Basquiat, famously, of course, in that show with Warhol, and they had the promo and the boxing gloves, but there's something very incredibly original about what Myth has done in this very, I find, touching, and I almost want to say just very human portrayal of Basquiat. And I'm going to show you here in this brilliantly chosen red, I might add here, this red on red, the deep red of the gloves and the light red of that's not a light red, the bright red, the deep red of the gloves and the bright red of the background. And again, it is overpowering. There's one on secondary. Again, this market has a heartbeat. Right? We have seen a softening, but there is a heartbeat. I'd argue it's more selective, if I had to guess, but this thing was gone in a couple of hours. I missed it. I'm pretty tempted to pick up the secondary here from Weaponized Pixels here. There's one left here. I may pick it up, listed a few hours ago. If it's still available, if I reload the page, it may not be. Let me show you a couple of things, though, here. First of all, I was going to go here just really quickly. This is part of a series of boxers, right? We have Mr. T here. We looked at that. We have the Myth himself, the Lemonhead, Daniel Myth, as a boxer. You have, I always forget the name, MF someone with the mask, with what I call the Doctor Doom mask, but what everybody else seems to know is something else. You have Lando Calrissian. And here, interestingly, right before this series started, you have People of Tezos. Was it People of Tezos? It was, which looked like the first real, for lack of better, I don't want to say authentic portrait, but accurate in the sense non-symbolic, whereas actually that's the artist, I suspect, here in the People of Tezos. All to say, this seems like a series that began here with what looks like Lando Calrissian as a boxer. So again, these decisions here, this poetry, this is the kind of work that I think, from my opinion, from my perspective, built the Myth into a somewhat, and I don't think he'd mind me calling him this, somewhat of a cult figure on the Tezos blockchain. If you don't know, it's kind of like Myth is very, I would argue, important in the artistic story of Tezos. Just in terms of what he represents, doing this, these are done on Procreate, but they're basically this Microsoft Paint style that Myth started with way back when in 2017, 2018, and started minting, I guess, probably in 2021. And I suspect, who was it? He's probably collected it, who was calling them Microsoft Paint artists. Usually he's on top. Yeah, he never got one of this. I wish I could remember his name. An awesome collector. I bet he's on. Let me just quickly check here. Rorich. It's Rorich. As Rorich described, Myth and Rat Cloak, especially like when I started discovering them, let's say in March 2022, I think it would be. We're already in 2024, astonishingly. He called them Microsoft Paint artists. And the style is retained, and let's just take advantage, actually, of Object's awesome zoom feature here. So kind of I wouldn't say exactly like the Microsoft Paint, but pretty like when you look at the ear here, we're getting pretty close. And even just the way these they're not quite gradients. They're everything's divided up into these solid colors. And even you see it here. Like a square brush, right? And I think Myth described in one of the art descriptions recently was describing using a square brush on Procreate. So basically, kind of still doing the style, but on a tablet, which is a lot, less cumbersome. But it does create a different kind of work because you may not get the same kind of mark making that you're going to get from a stylus, right? As you see here, kind of bigger brush strokes. Than a mouse, right? And some people use Wacom. I don't know if Myth was using Wacom or mouse. A lot of these, as Rorich described them as a prominent collector, by the way, on the Tezos blockchain, as he described as Microsoft Paint artists, I get the impression a lot of them are using a mouse. Now, who knows? Maybe some are using Wacom. Maybe it's both. Realistically, sometimes you sell a few works, maybe you buy a Wacom, is actually the reality of these things. I wanted to show you something very important here, too, in terms of the composition. Again, the poetry of Myth, because I brought it up here. This super famous poster, we've all seen it, I think. And if you haven't, the collaboration, one of the most famous, almost, I'd border on overseen, like overused images to a certain degree of the contemporary art world. Like, we've all seen it if you're on Instagram. We've all, this is just like a staple to the point where it's almost super obvious. But what I wanted to show is the difference. Look at the position, the position of the body, the layout of the body in this open, vulnerable Basquiat. Just open. And even if you look at these other Myth works, it's not like he was doing that with Mr. T, or even himself somewhat, or Danielle DeMille, somewhat with Lando here, with the wrappers for the boxing gloves, instead of, again, just really original stuff. But this open, positioning of the body, if we go back, there are no references here. I see a Basquiat who's not vulnerable, who's kind of fighting, in a weird way. This was kind of, somewhat prophetic of Basquiat and facing the system to a certain degree and, hands up, as the defensive pose. And, so you don't see an open, even here. You see this one here? And so I think that makes, so here, again, just defensive, right? So you go back here, and it makes this, portrayal all the more touching and poetic. There is a creativity here. It's not like Myth just said that one here, and let's do it, and hey, isn't that cool? I'm doing a Basquiat. And then you combine the openness and the vulnerability with that outrageous red, and this kind of stone, neutral gaze looking on, almost stoically. It creates this real cool interpretation and portrayal, a rich portrait of an artist who arguably, perhaps more than any other artist, has influenced, and I'm talking about Basquiat here, the, the next generation of artists, I would argue. And we see it in the legion of Basquiat imitators that we see on and I use imitators loosely, but influenced artists, shall we say, on the blockchain, in the NFT scene, on Instagram. His influence as an artist is immense. And as, I think it was Camille Paglia said, the real tradition is built by artists, being influenced by other artists. Those are the artists that we decide to remember. If I remember Paglia right, the artists that other artists choose to basically emulate or choose to be influenced by, those are the artists we tend to remember, was the argument. And so just kind of a beautiful, overpowering portrayal here of, an artist that's just so important, right, to this generation, I think unquestionably. And so Myth with a total home run. I mean, this is only an edition of 10. It is 18 Tezos. I'm probably going to pick this up. It is, Tezos is getting higher, it's above $1 again, so it's another story. But again, when you think of the poetry of this work, it doesn't seem too expensive after that. So, and the creativity again, most importantly, of the portrayal of the body, a vulnerable Basquiat. So, incredible work there by the Myth. Just another day, another masterpiece, as I like to say out here. So, some comments. This was from 2 days ago. Very interesting comment from Olirius that just came in. I think the first artwork, so we talked 2 days ago about this, again, another day, another masterpiece here from Tukes, this AI artwork, which was unbelievable. And I was daring myself to marvel at the incredible, what I would call brushwork of this AI painting, which I would also call it. So Olirius was commenting on this. I think the first artwork you featured must have been conditioned on advanced marbling techniques. And I think that's a very insightful thought there. Of course, marbling, I'm not exactly sure. It's almost like decalcomania. I'm not exactly sure how they make it. But I think a lot of us understand what you're talking about. And it does kind of give that impression now that you mention it, Olirius, which is not quite like painting, although kind of close. I bet it was done either through model, fine-tuning, prompting, or images. Look it up. It's amazing and gets incredibly delicate. But I agree that in the traditional version of the media, marbling, you couldn't achieve certain things that the AI model can then do after training. So even if we have figured out potentially one of the elements of Tukes' magic, and again, I'd check out his space that we did like 2 months ago, when I was in Sicily there, a brilliant space, brilliant artist, a philosophical artist, Tukes. Nevertheless, Olirius is saying, we may have figured out something about perhaps what's going on with Tukes' work, but nevertheless, the AI model can still seem to somehow outperform, what the real thing. It's back to even better than the real thing. One of the weird phenomenon that we've come to expect or experience with AI art. Sometimes we see it with Strange Thing. Again, AI art, when the painting is good, it feels sometimes better than great painting, which is a weird experience. And we see it here and just consistently across this entire work, which we looked at 2 episodes ago. Looking to comments on yesterday's show. Thank you, everybody, for commenting here. Human Boy, totally agree with Rada. So much value from your show, and I feel like I'm always learning something new. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Human Boy. Yeah, I'm amping up a little bit the historical content here to make it all, as we should in our art. Look at Myth there. As we should in our art, which I think, again, the more you have a conversation with the tradition, the more relevant one could argue it is. So I'm glad you're finding value in that Human Boy. Continuing on, Retro Manny. Great show as always. Regarding the curation notifications, I agree with you. Funnily enough, just moments after I was searching Object to see if there was a way of knowing. But actually, it's good not to know and be surprised when a sale is made. The sale actually says, with referral from, the conversation around Sky Goodman's post was really intriguing. It's an ongoing tension for the artist, but when we as artists can find a moment to step outside ourselves, we can see our creation with a lot more clarity. Very worthwhile internal dialogue to consider when coming towards the end of the creative process. Again, restating the question for those that didn't see it, we're discussing when is an artwork finished? Very interesting question here that has come up organically through our conversation. Anyway, enjoying all the artwork, especially the Kurt Hustle Collective works, me as well. Just a huge fan and always unpredictable, which for me is also the hallmark of good art. A brand new discovery for me, so thanks for sharing. Well, I'm excited for you, and I really encourage you to go to some of those old commercials. Maybe I'll have to curate. Like, I made the genres of digital art I did a year ago. It was a hell of a lot of work, a heck of a lot of work. And I put it in Z-Bar here in Berlin, just a one-night sort of thing. And so maybe I'll have to actually, I think I'm going to post that perhaps, because it was mostly Tezos art, if not all. I think it was mostly. And so maybe I'll turn that into a curation on Object. Happy birthday from our very friendly spam bots here. Thank you. And happy birthday as well. I assume this is spam. So, because it is not my birthday, although it's coming up in 3 weeks. So apologies, in a month. In a month. So apologies if that was for real. I suspect not. Just actually, let me back up a second here. Let me see here. There's something, okay, I want to bring up, okay, a couple of things here. We're going to come back to Oliveira in a second here. Let me just go, some of the comments I wanted to go through here. Here we go. Oliveira, great show. I always find a new artist you feature to follow and a new piece to collect. This is Oliveira Durdovic, who did the wonderful AI artwork, which is here that we looked at. So a new discovery for me. A very cool piece here. Thank you very much for showing my work, Merry Women, which is that work I just showed you. It is an AI image overpainted with digital brush in Corel Paint and Art Rage. So I'm not sure if I feel like I vaguely have heard of Art Rage. Corel Paint, I have looked at that. I haven't used it, but I remember looking, I don't know, a year or two ago and being very impressed with their brushes that they were doing, like the brushwork. And so maybe that explains some of this beautiful textures that you see in this work. I guess I also wanted to highlight, the reason I'm highlighting this though, what an interesting technique is you start with AI and then you paint over top of it just directly. I think that's pretty interesting. So thank you for sharing that and just incredibly interesting, Oliveira. Mie, thank you. Great episode. Gons, it's abandoned. This is interesting too. So, of course, and I'd forgotten about this quote when I was doing last episode, but of course there's that famous quote that is sometimes attributed to Leonardo, and we're going to get into that in a second. Artwork is never finished, only abandoned. And so thanks for writing that, Gons, because it made me think of that quote, and we're going to look at that quote in a second here. Tukes, an artwork is never truly finished, no matter what they say, so almost echoing that. Ed Marola, always refreshing to see Mr. Pocobelli with his vision. Thank you, Ed. Likewise, actually. Luciana Guerra, always great to hear from you. And Kells, great show, Adrian. Radayanki is dead right. Such value in every show. Those little historical tangents are massively beneficial. Loved all the Swift and Hogarth stuff. I'm really thrilled you hear that. Again, it's pretty exciting, 282 shows in to be able to, feel like you can improve the show. And I think that is a huge improvement. Let's continue here. And it was always there, but I'm trying to just emphasize it just a touch more, just to give a bit more value in our time here. There's a big, excellent bar in New York City called Swift Hibernian Lounge with the original church pews and pulpit from Swift's Parish in Larricore County, Ireland, and huge, bizarre floor-to-ceiling murals on the wall. If you're ever over here, Guinness on me. Awesome. Well, I'm sure I'll find my way to New York sometime soon. So Awesome. I'd love to go there. I'd love to just hang out and have a beer too. Pixel Lord, great question indeed. Thank you. And Mikey de la Creme, thanks for the feature, Adrian. This is quite interesting too, and you were spot on regarding the border. Of course, Mikey de la Creme very edgily left this black area that the AI left, so underneath this image. And I thought that was a really bold and super cool decision, as strange as that might seem to the outer world. I think from an artistic perspective, it's, again, we're constantly trying to rationalize reality. This is the reality principle. Freud's reality principle. Reality comes at us and we're always trying to organize it. Our reason organizes it. And so this happens with art as well, which feeds into our conversation on rawness. We're always trying to rationalize it. And so it's actually really hard, even though you might think otherwise. It's actually really, really hard to make decisions like this, because automatically you're going, okay, how am I going to solve that? I have a black stripe at the bottom. I need to solve that. Your reason wants to rationalize it, right? So let's look at this. It was a choice by AI that I was going to remove initially, but ended up leaving in. A very bold decision, I would argue, and that kind of decision looks easy. It's not. So really cool, great. And I love seeing that kind of what I would call sophistication on the blockchain. Like, to me, that's incredibly sophisticated, and maybe I'm making a lot too much of this, but to me, this is the path. This is a great, like, to me, it's like embracing irrational elements, doing, like, again, arguably, the amateur always wants to make everything perfect. Like, someone who starts making drawings for the first time, they are not going to leave that in. That is a pro move. So just very interesting. Thank you, Demon Ego and Quizitail. Thanks for the light on our collab with Padrino. And indeed, mint in 1 hour, and we're going to take another look at that, at the whole work. And Kurt Hustle Collective, just a joy to hear from JNK and Terry Visual, stars in my universe here. Let's quickly look here. So, who wrote "An artwork is never finished, only abandoned"? ChatGPT 4, because I was like, it sounds apocryphal, and we're going to go into what apocryphal means. But it sounds like something that was falsely attributed to Leonardo. It feels like one of those comments that people say it's Leonardo, but really maybe it's just on quotes.com or something, and it feels a little too almost cliche that Leonardo would do it. So I was like, did Leonardo say that? So I asked the question. The quote, "Art is never finished, only abandoned," is often attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. This phrase reflects the idea that an artist might never truly complete their work in their own eyes, but rather they reach a point where they must stop working on it, either due to external constraints or a personal decision to move on. However, it's important to note that the exact origin of the quote is uncertain. So my intuition there, I was like, because I love the quote, and I agree with it to a certain degree. Like, I think a lot of us relate to it, but I'm not convinced that Leonardo said that. But I mean, if someone knows in the notebooks and can read like backwards there, feel free to let me know. And it might not be a direct quote from Da Vinci himself. So ChatGPT was sort of on my wavelength there. I was glad to see this. Nonetheless, it captures a sentiment that many artists and creators can relate to. So a brilliant answer, once again, from ChatGPT 4. Now, apocryphal. This is an important word here, too. And apocryphal is exactly what we've seen right here, which is a quote or idea or text that is often attributed to someone falsely in the past. And it has a biblical context often, but let me just read it for you, because this is an important term, and it happens throughout the history of ideas, and it's just a good term to know. The term apocryphal refers to stories or statements of doubtful authenticity, despite often being widely circulated as true or factual. It is commonly used to describe anecdotes, quotes, or texts that are attributed to a certain person or source, but which lack verifiable evidence or may have been created or altered over time. I would argue that that quote there that we're looking at feels apocryphal. This term can also be used in a broader sense to refer to any dubious or unverified claim. In religious contexts, which is probably where this term came from, apocryphal specifically refers to books or writings that are not considered part of the official canon of Scripture. So like Mary Magdalene's, what would they call it, testament or whatever you would call that. There's all sorts of Gnostic works that are not included in the canon, which is, the works that are included in the Bible, the official Bible, which I think they decided in maybe 300 AD. So let's keep going. But I'm not positive on that date there, but somewhere around there they had a council, maybe in the 400s. We'll look. Maybe we'll look at some point. Little Cakes. My fave quote of yours, Pocobelli, from today's show, rawness has value. And I love that. I was trying to remember that quote when I was coming up with the title. I may use it today, actually, because it's a very interesting discussion. Also, thanks for featuring a range of my recent work. I think we have another one today, Cakes. So yeah, I'm excited just about what you're doing, and it's just really fun. So thank you for the comment, and I'm glad you appreciate that, because again, after the fact, maybe it's like let's actually look at Lily Illo and then talk a little bit more about rawness, which to me is not an obvious thing to discuss in terms of something to embrace. Like, I'm very much going, at least in my own mind, into kind of a little bit of an intuitive step there. So hearing that response from you, Little Cakes, it makes me feel a little bit more sure of that sense. Like, I'm glad to hear that it resonates. Let's put it that way. Let's keep going. Lily Illo. Reading When Things Fall Apart, Hard Advice for Difficult Times by Pima Chodron. Reflecting on Pocobelli's discussion of rawness today. When we are raw, we can fold, flatten, and maybe expand. So also resonating here with Lily Illo, who posted this beautiful work here. This stunning AI artwork here. I think it's the Architects in Chairs, a brilliant series here. And as you see, these wild chairs. And again, it's almost like things are getting boiled down and, almost back to Basquiat. I remember reading once this, I think it was Larry Gagosian talking about Basquiat, because of course, I think he bought the first, the skull. I think it was an interview with Basquiat, and he's talking about how great he was, because of course he died at 27, and he was saying that at 27, you were starting to see with Basquiat the work of a mature artist at the end of their career, like the sort of stuff you see in their 60s, 70s. In philosophy, that's often thought to be the time when you really start to get on top of things and where you start to be on your best game. Interestingly, I've heard philosophers, Kevin Corrigan there, a Neoplatonist, my old teacher there in the University of Saskatchewan, many moons ago. So going back to the Gagosian story, you're starting to see that in Basquiat, where things start to get minimal, things get to boil down, and things just start to, all the clutter starts to be removed, and then it's just about the essence of the art, okay? And so that's also part of this discussion here, and so it's just interesting, cutting away the clutter, so to speak, and I use clutter in quotes there. So anyways, a beautiful work here, posted by Lily Illo, a fabulous AI artist, who we've been following here for over a year, easy. Kika Nikolela, thank you, Lily Illo, for the comments as well. Again, Little Cakes on the rawness. I'm glad that's resonating. Kika Nikolela, GM, and a few reflections on curating on the Web3 space. While I was confident that the new curating feature of Object.com had the potential to be revolutionary, I was also aware that it would only be so if the community adopted it and made something or many things incredible with it. To my surprise, in only a few days, it has already surpassed every expectation I personally had. People are really spending time with the art, collectors reviewing their own collection and curating from there, artists looking at their art and curating from there, but above all, artists, collectors, and curators alike looking at the art and artists they admire and reflecting about them. This is so significant. The space really needed that to take away the weight we give to sales, interestingly. That's a great point. The curation really does, because otherwise, what is our measure of something kind of being significant? So that, and grouping is very important, as we've kind of discussed recently. And to bring the art to front stage again. This does not mean I don't care about sales, but it is not healthy for anyone, and that is especially true to creators, to focus on sales above all else. I agree with you. I was listening the other day to the conversation between Kalo NFT. Actually, I'm thrilled to mention, I think I can announce, I'm going to be on Kalo NFT's podcast, and he's actually going to be on the space, I think in February, mid-February. So that's exciting. I'll keep you updated on that. Great audience that Kalo's built over there. With Alex, so the conversation Kalo did on his podcast with Alex Esoteric of Right Click Save, who is the editor-in-chief there. Everyone should listen to it as Alex touches upon many important topics, but I wanted to highlight his thought on how Right Click Save focus, which is not necessarily true in their beginning, listening to how artists talk about their art in the space, and how that should be the primary way of approaching art on the blockchain. It's almost back to that Palia idea. The scholars, the historians can say everything they want. It probably comes down to the artists at the end of the day, at least in terms of just because the work itself, because then you can start to trace, right, the work itself, who artists let themselves be influenced by, and not through a top-down discourse by art historians or critics. And by the way, that is, art historians and critics play I would argue, a pretty important role, but to varying degrees, and it's very much a case-by-case basis. As I said here in an earlier show, I deal with individuals to a certain degree. So we were talking about Jerry Saltz, like how much is Jerry Saltz contributing when he just says this is mediocre, right? So again, case by case and everything. At least this is how I understand his ideas of Alex Esoteric. This converges perfectly with the curation that I've just came across with Joshua Sobel for bringing it to my attention, also known as Ah Heck, Deep Dive 1, Yuri J, and the Paradox of Place by RJ. RJ selected 8 pieces by Yuri J, a very prolific digital painter who has minted 247 artworks on Tezos, and wrote an in-depth 2,000-word essay about them. They minted the essay as a PDF and included it in the curation. The essay is great, and it made me look again at Yuri's work, me as well, under a new light, but that is not even the point. The point is an artist took the time, and a lot of time, to look, reflect upon, and write about the work of another artist, and minted it on the blockchain. And evidently not for financial reasons, the artworks that are highlighted are not new and are sold out on primary. Right, so it's not like RJ is going to get a cut. There's no financial incentive here. Maybe nothing of that is particularly new, but I hope to see it happening more and more. It gives me joy and reinforces my belief that we are all building this space as a special, unique, and necessary alternative to the rigid structures of the traditional art market. And here is one of those works, the work that RJ was highlighting. And as you see here, Yuri chimes in, now officially best NFT minted on Han. Not Thread, but I will share it. So Yuri J celebrating the curation there, and of course playing off of what RJ was saying, who was saying that that was the best work on him. Kalo, what's the biggest problem in the blockchain space? Fellowship, the biggest problem and opportunity is to align the values of what has been considered as valuable in art. It is aesthetics, the concept, process, historical reference, etc. Right now, most value is given to noise and early adopters. That's true. There's a lot to be said for that, actually. Let's continue here. Both have value, and we wouldn't be here without that, indeed. But in the perspective of 30 to 50 years, the only thing that will survive is the art by itself without the community hyping it. Also true. Are the images we are calling iconic and grails going to sustain themselves as artwork or as cultural artifacts in a history museums with sarcophagus and early cooking tools from 3,000 years ago? Yeah, do they have the cultural significance? This is I don't know if putting a dollar, I was going to say the $1 trillion question. I don't know if that's the right way of framing this. I guess it does have to do with money, but I don't want to emphasize it. That is the huge question here. Which works are going to retain significance, if any at all? This is the difficult question that needs to be asked here. I clearly think there are many works, say this opening work here. Part of the reason I do this show is because I think there's something significant is happening here. Something that you can't dismiss as much as you might try, right? If you put the time in and get to understand it, there's something, quoting David Hickey, rest in peace, the great art historian out of Texas, undeniable is undenied, right? And that is basically what we're trying to determine here. This qualitative science, scientific expedition, that we're engaging in here. So that works, but that is not art. Art has been art because of certain values. So I guess I'm not exactly sure but that is not art. I would, but I would argue, I would kind of frame this differently. You actually do want, but they are incredibly culturally significant. Cooking tools from 3,000 years ago, as well as sarcophagi, right? So you want to be able to have works that can, because at the end of the day, people are looking at a sarcophagus 3,000 years later, or 2,000 years later, let's say, more like 2,000, and going, this matters. And I think another way of kind of framing what fellowship is saying here is, what's going to matter? What are we actually going to remember? This is again, to call it a $1 trillion question is the wrong way of putting it. This is the big game. This is the ultimate question that if you're a historian, say, in this space, that you're trying to determine. And even as an artist, making work, should your main concern be sales or standing the test of time? Right? I would argue it's standing the test of time is really all that matters. It's not entirely sales matter. You got to survive. You got to eat. I emphasize it here a lot. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you're going to dedicate your life to being an artist, you kind of want to transcend time, as far as you can. So those values have not been fully considered in the NFT space. That is a problem and a great opportunity. So interesting comment there. Pol, or Sutan, who is the creator of the Pol token and doing a fabulous job with that, would love some way to like or favorite other users' curation in object.com. This crossed my mind as well. Just a way of kind of being able to collect and say, I guess you'd put a favorite tool beside the curation. Kind of like a bookmark of sorts. If I can later find them somewhere in my profile, that would be cherry on top. Exactly. Like a like is actually a great idea, because that could also be a way of measuring the popularity of a curation, potentially. So that's also interesting. So interesting comment there as we continue to help Object iterate. And here, have you noticed Object now supports uploads of up to 250 megabytes for all file types. So they're increasing the amount that you can upload in a file. So a quarter of a gigabyte is pretty significant amount of data. It's an interesting issue on the blockchain. There is a tension there, because some artists have an hour-long, 2-hour-long work, and right now they just expanded 250. It's a problem for some video artists minting on the blockchain. Anyways, I'm sure there are solutions, and there are. Hans, well, who knew? Anyway, not a lot seemed to care. It's gone. It was one of the more special platforms. Typed art, I am sad to report here, is shut down. I am so sad to hear that, because I still have about probably 5 or 6 works I want to make there. You could theoretically make it somewhere else, but that is really unfortunate. And I just think it's super unfortunate. And I think if people knew, I would argue if people knew that they were having an existential issue, and that they just, if more people minted, that maybe that they would be willing to stick around, I think a lot of people would have used it. It was a great platform, which again, for those that don't know, it was turning text, this is text here. And you can make images. I made some works, where you can use ASCII text or draw with letters, right? Something that the minimalists of the 60s did. And these kind of, you make an apple out of the word apple, right? This kind of stuff, very legit. Here you seem to see 2 people dancing or something, right? If you can see that, 2 figures. So yeah, really sad to hear that. Acid Boy, ordinals are on fire today. So Acid Boy minted this on Gamma, or actually I think it's a lazy mint. We're going to look here, because this is part of the issue with minting on ordinals, is it costs you a fortune. Ordinals are on fire today from 17 to 34 out of 100, thanks to all collectors. Fees are freaking low, time to grab your edition. So this is work, uploaded code, I believe, by Acid Boy onto ordinals. And remember, Ripcache had that hack of putting SVGs that can be turned into PNGs, and I have a feeling that's also a way of reducing file size. I'm not positive, but I have a feeling. Let's take a closer look here, because I think, again, these are what I would call, or what are often called lazy mints. As you see here, 40,000 sats, nice price. So you can buy for $18, I think. Cool series, beautiful, by the way, Acid Boy. Really original, I mean, just a really killer artist, as we know. Interactive P5JS animation. This is my Genesis piece on Gamma, and I think it's an edition of 100, and here's the market. So I'm not sure, but I wonder to myself, is Gamma let me just bookmark that. Is Gamma, do they enable you to do lazy minting, and can anybody use it? Because if they can do that, and by lazy minting, it means, for those that might not be aware, those are people that they pay for the artwork to be minted on the blockchain, not the artist. Usually the artists will mint it, and then they sell it. So they inscribe it onto Bitcoin in the Bitcoin case, and then it exists on the blockchain, already imprinted on a SAT, right? The most smallest unit of Bitcoin, and then you can buy it. With lazy minting, it's not done yet, but it's saying you can pay to have that inscribed, and then you're paying the fee. And so I think that might be what's going on here. So this requires more research here. I'm not sure if this is an open platform, but I hope so, because that makes me want to. That's a solution, isn't it? That is a real solution here. So Tezos, just on the crypto thing, this was remarkable. Just on the Tezos front here, as far as a cryptocurrency, with, of course, the ETF news, a lot of crypto pumped yesterday. And, of course, most of the works we see on here, maybe 70 or 80%, are on Tezos. And what was interesting about yesterday's price action, a little financial commentary for you, is it was probably the third or maybe the fourth or fifth out of the top 100 best performing cryptos. And that was interesting. So Tezos was up 30% at one point. I think it's at $1.07 now. So coming down a bit, but very interesting price action. Let's see if there's, so Empress Trash. Go, you little altcoin, go. So hilarious there. Citizen B. Being an early adopter takes a lot of conviction and patience. If you don't have that, buy Solana. but don't complain missing the meteoric rise of the true MVP Tezos this year. So interesting bullishness, I would say, on Tezos. So I don't know a ton. Perhaps ironically, having done hundreds of hours of content probably at this point, at least a couple of hundred hours of content. I don't know a ton about the Tezos, what they have planned as a blockchain. I get vague stuff off of Twitter, but nothing. So it's interesting just to hear there's a real bullishness on Tezos. I would argue all of the art that's on there is definitely, it's a very useful. I'll tell you this, it's largely a frictionless blockchain in terms of usage and in terms of onboarding. Like, I don't know if you saw that, I got to speed up this episode. I don't know if you saw that tweet by Punk6529 where it showed onboarding two friends onto Ethereum, and it was like, who would do this? I sent some little cards on another wallet, just Christmas cards to family and friends. I was able to onboard people just with Kukai, just like do Gmail, log in. If you want the quick and fast way to get an account, and then I'll send it to you, and then you can kind of figure out the stuff later. But just to get people started, I send them a few Tez, and they can get started. Right, so the onboarding on Tezos with, say, Kukai Wallet and that Gmail option, I think is pretty easy, surprisingly. So maybe that helps too. Let's continue. Kelowna Contemporary is going to be on our next space on Wednesday. And actually, if everything, I need to talk to Dina again, but Dina Chang, I talked to her maybe 4 weeks ago. I asked her, because Runetoon's going to be in Asia. Can't wait to hear about that. In Vietnam, I think, in Bangkok. So off for 3 weeks. So I asked Dina Chang if she wants to co-host, and she said yes. So hopefully I should go and confirm with her, but it looks like it's all good. So it should be a fun episode. Kelowna Contemporary is going to be on the next episode. of the spaces. And here is what they're up to. Michele Colonna. Some bragging in order because it looks so darn good, and 31% sold. Now the grand opening tomorrow night, building a happier home. So let me just show you some of this. So, of course, it's right out, I want to say on the edge of Philadelphia, in a suburb of Philadelphia. I think we'll confirm that on Wednesday, on the next space when we talk to Michele. But here, you can see the real nice job that Michele Colonna has done here, bridging this NFT space with physical art, and just really nice show here. By, I guess the artist is Bear, building a happier home. So some really nice paintings there. So again, just very cool to see what's going on there. And here, Anna Dart, this is Berlin. A lot of you might recognize this who have been in Berlin. This is Hackschurhofe. And there is some Anna Dart stickers, Happy New Year with Holodolls. And they're in this kind of famous area of graffiti. And I've been here a million times. I used to live in Mitte here in Berlin. I used to live very close to here. So there's Anna Dart in this. I'll have to see this in person. I'll probably be there, I think, next week, actually. So just very cool. I'll try to remember to take a picture. So congrats to Anna. Yeah, and there's the Apple store there for those that are in Berlin. I think there's two now, I think. So that's the one by Hackschurmarkt, as people call it. Continuing on, Artie Hands, all 30 pieces of scheduled programming have bids. So that must be exciting. And we talked to Artie Hands, of course, on the space on Wednesday. So probably somewhat of a relief. So very thankful that Loved Orlears, who is Frank Manzano, giving him a follow. Work is resonating with the community. Auctions are open till 1 or 2 Eastern tomorrow. Links to the series in VerseWorks below. So I actually brought that up here, just so we could see. And because we talked about this on the spaces. And so here's the show. And as you see, I mean, not worrying about making it too expensive, $50, $55, $20, $160 though, dollars. So a wide range here, and all works have bids. So the power, again, in a tough market, the power of making like a low reserve, right? I remember that with Louis Osborne. He often does that, where even whether it's a super rare object, he'll put a low reserve to make sure that bidding starts. So that's powerful, because then all of a sudden things get going. And with an auction, once it's 24 hours, okay, worst case scenario, you get your reserve. And so, if you're selling 50 works at $20 each, you've still made $1,000, which maybe pays your rent, So here's just Frank Manzano's work, which I hadn't seen before. As people were saying, kind of disturbing. Let's turn. So it seems to be AI, really interesting use of AI. Here's another one. Cool AI video. They could use a maximize here. And what was so interesting, one of the things that were interesting about Artie Hands's show, or the discussion we had, was when Artie Hands was given the opportunity by VerseWorks to put something together. It was Frank Manzano's voice that just kept on coming up, percolating to the top of Artie Hands' decision-making of who he wanted to feature. And there's something to be said for that, just listening to your intuition there. And so Artie listened to his intuition. I think pretty original and cool show in discovering a new artist here. I think really interesting, AI video work. So just a little bit there to kind of where you can start to see what's going on here. People are saying disturbing and everything. So yeah, just check out the space if actually you want more information. That is in my Twitter feed. Also here, this looks like oil pastel here on, looks like canvas, but with the plotters. So another really nice use of the plotters here. Nice mark making, as usual. Again, I love this idea I love this idea of the plotters because it kind of takes the anxiety out of painting. It's like you're going to get beautiful marks. You don't need to worry about it. Just do this. Paint the thing, and then I don't need to worry that every brush stroke is going to be perfect. Another way to get rid of the anxiety is just to make a ton of work where you're working fast. We'll see that at the end again with Bondizo, I think Bondodo, if I remember the name right. He's making so much work that you don't need to think about it. You see Picasso, that famous thing where he paints the bull on the mirror. See how fast he does it? That's another way of kind of removing the anxiety of just putting a paintbrush stroke on the ground. Very cool. That's Corey Haber. And here is Luciana Guerra. Last phase of this work in progress, almost there. So interesting kind of, this looks almost like there's no, it doesn't look like there are stretcher bars on this, which is interesting. So just a nice physical work here. I think it's oil. And as you see here at the bottom, it looks like oil on canvas or on, I'm not sure if it's canvas, maybe on cloth. Interesting piece here by Luciana Guerra. And here is a work on Solana, art on Solana, as we begin, finally, 50 minutes in. I'm trying to make these episodes like 45 minutes to an hour. I don't know what's happening. I think maybe there's just a lot to catch up on here. I think that's part of it, but I don't want to be, and I appreciate, someone was mentioning that they're really enjoying the 1.5 hour episodes. And I appreciate that. I think that's great. And I haven't been worrying about it, but ultimately I am trying to, if some people are wondering, I am trying to minimize the length here. In order to do that, I need to run through this work a little bit more here. So just another interesting piece here by Luciana Guerra. This is on Solana. So another abstract, mostly, I would say it's almost got a bit of a Miro in some of these marks here, over there. But a lot of stuff going on. It's original. And of course, we looked at this work here yesterday, Children Eater, this drawing that was rendered in 3D. So this is Luciana Guerra's a page on exchange.art. And here you see all of the work, actually, that Luciana has listed here. Sold for 40 sol. Incredible. I wonder if that, let's see when that was. Because that is an incredible sale. 6 months ago, so $1,000. Wow. Nice work from Luciana. I'm not sure it's going to load up. Let's just give it another second here. Doesn't look like it. So we'll have to move on here. Oh, there we go. So this work sold for $1,000, and there it goes. We'll just give it a second here. And I'm not sure if the shows are going to get shorter. Okay, we might just have to come back and hope that loads up. Write your name here. So this is Santiago with a really cool original, more bold colors. We saw it in the opening work. Here's another bold, bright color in the background, almost a neon green, with a fairly minimal work as well. A fairly raw work, we might be tempted to say, with just some few marks here. Again, it's interesting debate as you are making an artwork, how removing things. We always feel like we need to do more, and that the more work you put into a work, the better it is, but that's not necessarily the case. Poetry doesn't necessarily work that way. So nice piece here by Santiago. And how many editions? 20 editions, sold at a smart 3 Tezos, and now sold out. So there's something to be said for, again, not charging too much. Let's see if this loaded up. It did. So almost a kind of Hieronymus Bosch, Peter Bruegel type work here. And I think I remember Luciana putting out a work that was kind of like the Garden of Earthly Delights. This, you see it up here, these kind of figures. So a little bit of influence, one would think, or a hat tip, you could say, to Hieronymus Bosch here. So beautiful work here. This is on Solana, and it is called The Temptation of St. Anthony Central. Bosch's, so here she even mentions Hieronymus Bosch's saint. Okay, excellent. So that was actually Hieronymus Bosch's favorite saint, St. Anthony, a famous, often portrayed saint who was tempted by, I think, carnal or earthly desires. I can't remember. Santiago with another work here. Another interesting, beautiful work here. I think Vector here almost has something kind of really painterly about it, though, over here. Just a nice piece. Posted on X. This is Ed Marola. And look at how great that work looks on the page here, on this object page. This great patterning making this figure here. And again, just the more prolific you are, the more just really cool stuff happens. So there's something to be said for that, as we see here. And there is maybe the dreamer, just someone sleeping on their side here, tiny little homunculi here. And there you see all of this great stuff, probably pretty quickly put together. Beautiful work here from Ed Marola. This is 9 Tezos, edition of 10. Nice slow edition there. This is also an edition of 10. This is 9 Tezos. And here we have kind of a devil animal figure on a tree. And again, kind of more of this. We should be zooming in here. Let's see if it works. And you got to love this in the bottom. Not sure if my zoom is working here. You got to love what's going on in the bottom here. I see you. Nice touch. And these great plants, which you can see they're kind of almost blurred out here. Like all these pixels are being treated. This is not typical pixel art. This is starting to get dark here. It's already 3:30 in the afternoon here, a bit of a later episode. So let's continue, but gorgeous work here from Ed Marola. Continuing on, one more, Waiting for You to Dream of Me. This is also 9 Tezos, an edition of 10. So very cool work here. Not loading up. I'm not sure if, let me just fix my internet here. Put it on my phone. But you see here, the eyes. That is hilarious and classic Ed Marola. So nice piece there. And let's continue. Gloomtube, Loitering. And I thought this was a beautiful piece. Let's see. Okay, new internet is working here. Just a nice, I remember this kind of heavy canvas kind of style from earlier, using it in the jeans here from Gloomtube. And there's some more cigarette butts and a bottle of alcohol, kind of a depth of field thing going on here in the background, contrasting here with this really cool kind of nice, it's not a still life, but kind of up close of just someone's kind of patchy jeans, and you see the culture there, dollar, dollar, whatever that's, dollar store of sorts, Loitering. Nice, again, a nice portrayal of American culture here from Gloomtube. Very interesting as ever. Portrait of Bill Gates, and this is by Wasteman Goldminovich. And so putting a cigarette, interestingly, a McDonald's cigarette perhaps, in Bill Gates' mouth here. Wasteman Goldminovich does a little portrait here. Really nice treatment of the hair, by the way. These strokes over top, this kind of not worrying or caring. I sometimes like to work like that. That is a very, I really like that. You just put broad color underneath, and then you just put some strokes and not worry about it looking good, and then it turns out it looks great, right? Nice portrait there. And here is the work we were discussing yesterday that was a collaboration between Padrino and L'Inquisiteur. Tout est à nous, rien n'est à eux. Everything is for us, and nothing is for them. And here we have Jeff Bezos, it looks like, and so another Bill Gates appearance. And here you see, if you remember, and maybe this is a Cybertruck, and maybe there's X, and so this is probably Elon Musk. So an interesting kind of class piece here by kind of all sorts of things going on here with the Mickey, or with the V for Vendetta mask there. And some, so interesting piece here. Nice portrayal of the fire in the Cybertruck there. So kind of a political work here by Padrino and L'Inquisiteur, 4 Tezos, edition of 22. And how many are left here? And 17 available on primary. And Miramar. So here, interesting work by Geek. Just someone going out to the sea, and then just kind of, they look like they're bleeding or something and dead. So interesting, kind of mysterious work here from Geek. And that is 4 Tezos, an edition of 5. And I think all are still available here. Continuing on, Mumble Boy, Hills Are Waves. So a couple more. I don't think we looked at these ones. These works are quite interesting, aren't they? As we get to learn more about Mumble Boy, kind of combining gradients and digital collage here, and this kind of masking technique, just interesting piece here. 12 Tezos, and this is edition of 1. And here's another edition of 1, 12 Tezos here, Vibe River N. Another just interesting work here. by Mumbleboy. Again, collage, gradients, digital. And here is Demon Ego with another kind of, stretching the boundaries of Demon Ego's art here. An interesting almost body of sorts here. You see a head, body empty, interestingly, a foot, hand, right, arms. First step, print design. So more just interesting work, almost broken into windows here. Very cool from Demon Ego. And another cool work here from Katarina Creates. Also, I believe, a edition of one. And this is 20 Tezos. And almost this Lady Godiva type figure with smoking a cigarette on the horse. And just another beautifully textured work here. Beautifully illustrated. Combining different, looks like some paint kind of drips or paintbrush of sorts, maybe Procreate, and just nice texture there and composition, and interesting as ever. With a cigarette there, Smoking Rider, 20 Tezos, Katarina Create. And here, this is at auction for 75 Tezos, Jake Studios, Most Vulnerable Player of the Year, MVP, and so Beware of Gods. So interesting, again, a very kind of enigmatic artist here, and we see a trophy with a green flame, some interesting kind of semi-pixelated clouds, like drawn, and what falls is these kind of JPEGs, these file JPEGs, I think, if I am seeing that right, or maybe it's the image itself, and the head that switches, so kind of, again, a bit of a surreal illustrator here. Digitally drawn animation, 75 Tezos on, and yeah, so I'm not sure if there are any bids yet. But we should keep speeding through this. Continuing on. I went to touch the grass, Nicole. So an artist I hadn't seen before, but I thought just kind of a cool work here, where the screen is bleeding into our reality here, and the leaves are blowing right off the canvas here. Interesting also kind of 45-degree angle on this, and it's always interesting to see laptops, frankly, portrayed. It's back to Baudelaire. I can even connect this to Baudelaire. I mean, the painter of the modern world, right? Baudelaire, the artist of the present, right? Portraying how, artists should concern themselves with the business of the present. And we see that when people are dealing with laptops. For example, J.G. Ballard, that was also one of his main things. As he'd put it, I think, dealing with the next 5 minutes. Right? And so this is also interesting. Juan Poiesis, just a interesting poster here celebrating Paul Eluard, a famous surrealist poet. If I were to start over, I'd find you without looking for you. So that is probably an example of Paul Eluard. It is. It's a phrase that comes from the poem Au cœur de mon amour by Paul Eluard. And here, Juan Pez puts a illustrated skull with illustrated mushrooms here growing out of it. So interesting piece here. And you can read all about that in the writing here. And moving along, Nuv 1914 with some works here, just more interesting experimentation, I'd be tempted to call it, just interesting pieces here. Playing with framing, some gradients here, and just wild compositions. Passage, so this is an edition of one, sold for 9 Tezos. Te Miro, this is still available. And again, one of these interesting abstracts with this framing device here. And continuing on one more, again, just the framing device on the side, but not on the top. I mean, these are bold. Again, remember we were discussing with Mikey Wilson's work, leaving the bar at the bottom, embracing the irrational. I would argue we're seeing that here at the top, and that, again, that gets my sort of my radar going, and it kind of lights things up. It's like something interesting is happening here. So just interesting work here. This sold as well to Trippy Collector. Shout out to Trippy, 10 Tezos. Continuing on, Sabato posted this. Let's see if it plays. We may have to reload and pray. We may have to pray. Let's see here. And quickly go back to old internet, and we will see if this works. And we are in business, my friends. Okay, we're back in business here. Deluxe Paint 4, so this wasn't minted, as far as I understand. RGB Drawing 01. So a cool abstract here using red, green, blue. Interesting use of green there, even the blue. Interesting work here. And this is a work by Sabato, I think, done on New Year's. Depaint and data bending study. This is a one of one that was maybe a commission here sent to Matto. So if we look at the large version, I love these pieces. Just a cool glitch artwork here with depaint, combining depaint and data bending. So combining glitch techniques, data bending, and then, a classic, I would argue that's a glitch thing, is to use retro software, right? Let's continue here and run. Clint Fulkerson, pruning the digital bramble topiary. So kind of looking like plants there, but pixelated and just interesting piece on X from Clint Fulkerson. Andre Oliveira Cibola, good night. Just more interesting animated pixel art, abstract pixel art. Here's Blood 281 on Instagram. Interesting. You see that almost a similar framing device, but different here by Blood 281. Broken here by this kind of Windows-like element, X element. And so interesting piece here. I'm not sure, no title, I think. So cool work there. Martin Bruce, very cool fish. Almost looks like the ancient Christian sign for Christianity. That fish here, swimming fish. Kind of glitched out in a interesting kind of rounded, square, pixelated style there from Martin Bruce at normal speed. And let's quickly look at the market. Edition of 1. I'm not sure if this has been listed, just minted. And here is a new work, somewhat new. Actually, I guess it's last week from Cap'n here, also known as Figments. Just a cool pixel artwork of a plant. So plants are back in the form of figments, in figments, in the style of figments. Let's continue here. Desert Wanderer, this is EMI Pixel. Kind of a cool piece here, just a simple pixel artwork of someone in the desert looking off at the stars, and an interesting geological structure there. Nice piece, and this is an edition of 1. Not sure if it's been listed. Continuing on, this was in yesterday's show, but I was going through so fast through it that I never stopped to look at it. This is Kareem Safa's work. And as you see, this pixel art factory of the squares being pushed around here, kind of classic, black and white, and beautiful complexity in the top left here. And just wanted to give this, and again, you see this, the pixels, the squares being pushed through of different size, and then you get the final at the bottom, the factory of pixels, the pixel factory creating boxes at the end out of squares. Nice, simple, beautifully simple and cool concept. Kurt Hustle, A Room with a View. And this is only a Tezos on primary and a cool TV here with some screens and just interesting piece there from Kurt Hustle Collective. And there's another one, cool tips. Right-click on TV screen to bring up video options such as pause, mute, full screen. Let me try that. I'm not sure if that'll work here. No, it doesn't. So this also came out from Kurt Hustle Collective. And maybe sometimes you get, this is 97 editions, and this is just transferred. So oftentimes, if you buy the TV, I'm not sure how it's going, but some of the people who bought the TV got this, but not everybody. So I'm not exactly sure how it works. Maybe they still need to be sent out. Not sure, but cool work from Kurt Hustle Collective. Let's continue. Walk 949 as we sail off into the weekend here. I'm starting to get pretty excited. Edition of 1. Again, playing, I believe, with September 11th imagery here, going minute by minute and giving it Walk's digital process here. So this is at auction for only 3 Tezos. Elna Frederick, Chandek, so another kind of cool, I won't leave this on for too long, but interesting piece, almost like a social situation given the Elna Frederick treatment. And here are a few more from Klaus, just a few more new ones. This is 21 Tezos on primary, just gorgeous colors here and textures. Composition 61, this is also 21 Tezos. Almost looks like a card deck here, something like the 9 of diamonds or something. So more just interesting work here. Composition 60 by Klaus, this is sold. So just a ton of work, and it's almost all selling here. That went to House of the Model, like just probably increasing Klaus's collector base here. Nicely, we were talking about this on Twitter, on X. it makes it extra alluring. Doing a one of one at a reasonable price. There's something about the one of one. So as we were discussing in this market, it's not a bad place to be. So here, just another cool, beautifully textured and colored work. Animated abstract. Here's one by Renke, which was pretty interesting. Very prolific. Puts out something, I think, almost every day. So cool piece there. J.R. Namba. This is a one of one for 100 Tezos. And here is Caving Wild, Hiken, with another cool abstract work, kind of geometric, minimal abstract art. Another nice piece in that collection. And here is Dylan doing a Cosmic Tetris. So interesting piece here. As you can see, Tetris in the background and just very minimal, kind of interesting piece. Again, not sure where this is all coming from. Let's put it that way, but interesting. So I show it here. Cosmic Tetris. Kind of mysterious work. Little Cakes, The Feels, 15, as we get into AI work here. And it is playing. Cool visual here. So sort of skipping through it a little bit, but check it out on Little Cake's page. Look at this. I mean, visually awesome. So very cool work from Little Cakes, The Feels 15, and Nami Nori Bum. This was retweeted by Artie Hans. And I'm not sure if the music is copyrighted. I assume it is, so that is why I'm silencing it. Maze, I thought it was just a pretty interesting work here, using, I assume, AI video, right? And there you see the hieroglyphs in the background there. Cool piece. Just fun and interesting, and you see the power of AI video here. We're just getting started, aren't we? Continuing on, this is, I believe, Sky Goodman. The sky is indifferent to man and beast. Sounds almost like a William Burroughs-like statement here from Sky Goodman. Death Time, in what looks like a Burger King logo here, and more playing with the sky, using a lot of different things, as well as AI. Mikey Wilson here with a beautiful AI work, playing with the guitar series here, and this beautiful orange sky, this sunset here. Great piece from Mikey Wilson, and this is Tukes. Blessed GM Y'all, and this is on exchange.art, so a new work on Solana here. Almost has a bit of a Magritte feel to it. And again, playing with foreground and background kind of subject matter. Interesting painting here, down here, this cloud, and this, as well as the portrayal of the sun and everything, just interesting colors. Great work from Tukes as usual. And here's Dylan as well, lino cut print on paper. So this is interesting. So this is a lino cut print. So of course, there's woodcut and there's lino cut. It basically has the same result, kind of, but lino cut's a lot easier. That's where you carve in, and you can get it at most art supply stores. So very cool. Dylan making a physical here, as you see, 1 of 10. And we saw also, I believe, Uxine do a lino cut recently. So Tarazi. So cool work here. Dylan experimenting and trying new things, I think, or at least new things in the feed. So cool work there. A lot of Dylan's work would work well as prints, one gets the impression. I thought this was just a cool video I thought this person, like, first you see the contrast here between when you pixelate stuff just partially. You see how good that automatically looks? That's contrast, right? And I also thought this person is very good. Like, it's not that easy, I would argue, you got to have the right brush and just know what you're doing to make pixels that fast. So cool art from Andre Schul's art. Cool idea and everything. I thought this was cool too. Francis Coe out of Porto. Maze, just a nice work here. Illustration. I thought just a beautiful piece. Here is Lugas Elias from It's Not Gallery. And just another interesting kind of enigmatic piece here. These horses and lions, bold composition here. Again, not worrying about filling in all the negative space, and that, I'd argue, that makes it better, right? Here, Zoe Kim, Do Not Disturb, as we As we run to the end here, we are almost done. Cool apple tree, it seems, with eyes on it. And of course, Bondoso Bandido. That is who it is. So here is another painting from this incredibly prolific artist, Mr. Important, and just incredibly original. This guy is exciting, just very exciting, and just working around the clock. Pretty young person, very interesting, nice textures. Very impressive. That's why I keep showing the work. Mark Belden. Also, when I saw this originally, I didn't see this light green, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Mark Belden is just using just the foreground color, or just like the positive space, because usually there's two colors, and there is in this one. But when you squint, you can just see it as the orange, and I thought that was actually kind of interesting too. It's also interesting to take a color that's very close to the background there. So this is 2024 gouache on Saint Armand paper, if you're wondering what that beautiful paper is. And here again is Joao Salazar, still life from the windows, from the windows, plasticine painting on acrylic board. And this is an edition of 21 selling for $777, and there are 5 left. So cool work here as ever from Joao Salazar, this incredibly original plasticine artist. And that, my friends, is your show. Thank you for joining me if you got this far, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And until next time, take care.